What's up, spacers? This is your specialist, the Space Technician. Starship's third test flight. This was truly a historic event. The first time the largest rocket ever built achieved orbital velocity. But it was also a bit of a nail-biter, as we'll get into. After two previous explosive test flight attempts in 2023, SpaceX was finally ready to push Starship further than ever before. The 400-foot, or 121-meter-tall, fully stacked system with the Super Heavy booster and Starship upper stage was on the pad at their Starbase facility in South Texas. The countdown went smoothly, with no technical issues, delaying the 9:25 a.m. Eastern liftoff time. And then, flames erupted as all 33 Raptor engines on the Super Heavy booster roared to life. The moment we'd all been waiting for. Liftoff. All 33 Raptor engines flared to life in an incredible display of raw power. Over 16 million pounds of thrust blasted Starship off the pad, quickly enveloping the entire vehicle in a billowing cloud of exhaust and dust. But this metal behemoth wasn't about to let a little atmosphere slow it down. Starship's massive bulk tore through the haze, revealing its full height as it clawed its way into the sky on pillars of flame. Within just 52 seconds, it was already punching through the sound barrier and into supersonic flight. The acceleration was relentless as Starship powered upwards on those 33 Raptor engines. We're talking about twice the thrust of the mighty Saturn V here, folks. The exterior camera views gave us an awesome perspective of just how forcefully this rocket was climbing away from the Earth. Starship kept piling on velocity, battling against increasingly dense atmosphere. Then, at max Q, the point of maximum aerodynamic stress, around 34 seconds in, we still had a perfect view of that full engine ensemble going full tilt. By a minute into the flight, the vehicle had already reached an altitude of 10 kilometers while going over 1,000 meters per second. The nose cone cam at this point looked like it was shooting through a concrete tunnel, with the sky getting closer every couple of seconds. Just under 3 minutes into the flight, at around 2 minutes 42 seconds after liftoff, SpaceX performed the crucial hot staging maneuver, one of the most anticipated milestones of this test, since this is where the previous test had failed. Hot staging refers to the staging event where the rocket's first and second stages separate while both stages are still firing their engines. This is in contrast to traditional staging, where the first stage cuts off all engines before separation. For Starship, hot staging involved shutting down 30 of the Super Heavy booster's 33 Raptor engines, leaving just the center 3 engines running at lower thrust levels. Simultaneously, the 6 Raptor engines on the Starship upper stage ignited and quickly ramped up to full thrust. We could see this play out in the telemetry view as 30 of those engine icons winked out on the booster while all 6 lit up on Starship. The live camera feeds also caught this spectacular transformation as the brilliant plume shifted in intensity. Both stages remained interlocked for a few seconds by mechanisms called separation clamps. This allowed Starship's engines to build up thrust, while Super Heavy's aerodynamics kept everything stable. Then, at around 2 minutes 44 seconds into the flight, the clamps released and a dramatic separation began. The now tiny Super Heavy booster fell away, while the much slimmer Starship continued powered ascent on its 6 Raptors, slowly drifting apart. This marked the first ever successful hot staging event for a launch vehicle of this massive scale and thrust capability. Previous hot staging had only been achieved on much smaller rockets, like Soyuz. The advantages are clear. Hot staging allows both stages to contribute direct thrust all the way through staging, rather than losing the booster's push. It also sets up the second stage's engines for cleaner and more efficient ignition by settling all the propellant to the bottom of the tanks. For Starship in particular, hot staging provides an estimated 10% gain in payload capacity to orbit compared to traditional staging, a significant improvement for such a critical capability. Another key advantage is reducing the number of mechanisms and potential failure modes during staging. While hot fire staging, it's just a few clamps released, no pusher rockets or explosive bolts required. Physics does most of the work, with the thrust vectors gently pulling the stages apart. So in a sense, SpaceX checked off two critical objectives in one: executing the first ever hot staging for a super heavy lift launch vehicle at this scale, while also achieving clean staging and handoff to the Starship upper stage. A major milestone indeed. After separating from Starship, the Super Heavy booster initiated its boost-back burn, using the 13 center Raptor engines still firing. This critical maneuver reversed the booster's horizontal velocity to put it on a trajectory arcing back towards the launch site and planned splashdown zone in the Gulf of Mexico. During this boost-back burn phase, we could see the booster's 4 massive grid fins rotate and articulate to control its orientation and angle of attack as it pushed back against its initial eastward inertia. The grid fins, along with the gimbaling of those 13 center engines, allowed for active aerodynamic steering of the 230-foot or 70-meter tall booster. The boost-back burn lasted approximately 1 minute, slowing Super Heavy's velocity from over 5,000 miles per hour or 8,000 kilometers per hour down to around 1,000 miles per hour or 1,600 kilometers per hour, before the engines automatically shut down once the proper angle had been achieved. Then, the real sphincter tightening moment, the landing burn attempt. This is where things started to go awry. When Super Heavy was about 20 miles or 32 kilometers offshore at an altitude of around 6 miles or 10 kilometers, only a handful of those 13 engines relit for the landing burn. Ideally, all of them should have ignited to rapidly kill the remaining vertical velocity. In the video views, we could clearly see just a single engine plume firing up against the booster body. The telemetry view showed 3 engines briefly lit, before 2 of them cut off shortly after. With such minimal thrust available, Super Heavy's descent rate was barely impacted. It maintained an arcing trajectory until ultimately slamming into the Gulf of Mexico at over 400 miles per hour, or 644 kilometers per hour, in more of an uncontrolled, hard splashdown. While not the soft, propulsive landing SpaceX had aimed for, the mere fact Super Heavy made it that far through boostback represented major progress over its previous test attempt, which ended in an explosive breakup. The boostback and near-landing burn provided a wealth of data on Super Heavy's entry dynamics, aero surfaces, and propulsive landing capabilities that will be critical for dialing in future attempts. Recovering this vehicle was never the goal. Just clearing that milestone was a big step forward. One of the major objectives that didn't get attempted was the relighting of one of Starship Raptor's engines while in space. This is a crucial capability for future operational Starship flights, where a relight will be needed for deorbit burns and inserting payloads into precise orbits. SpaceX cited excessive vehicle roll rates during the coast phase as the reason for scrubbing this engine relight test. Firing up the engine while the vehicle was rapidly rolling could have potentially caused problems or instability, so they played it safe, though it was certainly a missed opportunity to gain critical data. However, what this flight lacked in accomplishing that particular objective, it more than made up for, with the simply astounding live video views of Starship's re-entry phase that we were treated to. As Starship approached the top of the atmosphere, around 400,000 feet up, or about 122 kilometers, the thermal protection system tiles on its belly started to glow from the intense heat of re-entry. Then, as it punched deeper into the thickening air, we could clearly see the plasma sheath forming around the vehicle's periphery. This plasma forms when the superheated atmospheric gases around the re-entering object become so hot that the atoms ionize, stripping electrons away and forming an electrically charged bubble. This plasma sheath can actually block radio communications, which is why a re-entry video has been so rare until now. The impressive Starlink satellite terminal aboard the Starship beamed back unprecedented video of this plasma environment, showing debris and tile fragments being blown off the heat shield by the immense 25,000 mph or 40,000 km/h re-entry forces. We were quite literally getting a live view into the hellish realm of hypersonic re-entry. Unfortunately, this is where luck ran out for Ship 28, as SpaceX had nicknamed this Starship vehicle. Around 65 kilometers altitude deep in the plasma sheath, telemetry was lost from both the Starlink terminal and NASA's TDR-SS relay satellites simultaneously. This is a clear indication that the extreme re-entry heating and forces finally became too much for the test vehicle's structure to withstand. Mere minutes after those last breathtaking video frames, evidence shows Ship 28 broke apart and was destroyed during this critical re-entry phase. While it was a harsh ending, SpaceX still considered this a major success and accomplishment. The various live video feeds and telemetry captured up until that terminal moment provided volumes of invaluable data on the staging, near-orbital coast, re-entry heating, aerodynamics, and performance of key systems like the payload door. All of this data will allow them to keep iterating and improving Starship through an ambitious testing campaign planned for the rest of 2024. The next major goal is to recover both stages, catching the Super Heavy with the launch tower's chopstick arms, while performing a fully controlled Starship re-entry and landing. This rapid development is critical for SpaceX because NASA is relying on Starship to land the Artemis 3 astronauts on the Moon, currently targeted for late 2026. That's less than 2 years away. While this flight was a huge step forward, SpaceX clearly still has some major hurdles to clear in qualifying this system for human spaceflight. But knowing their iterative design philosophy and seeing what they've already accomplished, I have faith we'll see Starship sticking more and more landings soon. SpaceX founder Elon Musk has his sights firmly set on creating a fully reusable interplanetary transportation system, starting with returning humans to the lunar surface. Those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think about this flight in the comments below. Did SpaceX manage to stick this test as well as they hoped? What were your favorite moments or shots from the incredible video? Any predictions for when we might see the next Starship launch attempt? I'll be covering all the latest developments here, so make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. This is the Space Technician signing off for now, and I'll see you, Space Cowboys, in the next one.